My dear friends, the 4th of August is still a day at Bologna itself, where St. Dominic's body lies, where this feast is celebrated by Notre Indult. The figure of this saint is something which collocates us in the power of providence and eternal wisdom. This young man was, early in life, made a canon of Osma, but grace worked on him in a very particular way. He became close to his bishop, the which travelled here and there, and on their travellings together they discovered in the south of France much ado. The Albigensian heresy. What happened? The wisdom of God worked on the heart of this young preacher, and he bonded with others, and it became a new pattern of life, orientated in the immediate towards this issue, but then a powerful tool in the hands of the Blessed Trinity. Why was it so important historically? I'll tell you. I was formed by the Human Tensions, and we were the last of the old, which made possible the first of the new. Listen. Norbert, one day, a rich nobleman that he was, but already inserted in an ecclesiastical career, because that was where it was done, had a friend, it would seem, a lady, and one night he was going to see her. It came to fall. The heavens were open, and there was thunder and lightning. He fell from his horse, and in a flash of time saw his whole life passing before his mind's eye, with all eternity before him. He was fulminated by divine grace, went to see a bishop whom he knew, and pleaded with insistence for ordination. He was subdeacon already, he wanted to be deacon and priest immediately, and the bishop acceded to what is still known to this day as the Normandy privilege. One can be ordained deacon and priest the same day in that family by indult. He then became one of the greatest preachers of the Middle Ages, so much so that people thought that Norbert would be far better known than his friend Bernard of Clairvaux. But Bernard wrote, and Norbert didn't. However, wherever he went, mothers were afraid that their children might see him and not come back. The same with Bernard of Clairvaux, and he would gather women of all kinds, the result of which was, by the time of his early death, there were at least 10,000 consecrated women living in cloisters of his, and in came the army of Normandy canons. Now, what happened? He died young as Archbishop of Magdala. The first abbot of Prémontré after him was Hugh, who took on one block of Cistercian life, basically, and made the monastic life also priestly life. Now that's important. Until then, essentially, the monastic life was based on labor, intellectual and manual. At that point, a new bomb was dropped on the church. The people could also, as well as living fully the monastic life, be explosive in their word and ministry, and hence you had this great battalion, as it were, of human torpedoes coming out of the cloister, preaching and bombing parishes with the fullness of the contemplative life. That was already the backdrop, but it was still contained by the monastic structure of abbey, abbot, prior, and enclosure. St. Dominic was influenced by all that. He took on essentially a lot of the pre-Constitution constitutions. He took on the white habit, he took on the Augustinian rule, he took on the choir. That was still there with Dominic, but it was not with St. Francis in the same way. He was working in parallel on a different level. What happened? This element of having people form the fullness of contemplative prayer, but orientated not towards manual work, but study and the use of what was learned in combating truth and half-truth, was a huge tool, and still is in the church to this day. My 2 periods in Rome was with them in the Angelicum, named after one of the great masters, the Angelic doctors, St. Thomas Aquinas. And one day, John Paul II came back to talk to us to his old university. And his comment after the talk was, when I was here, there were no women around. Times have changed, but it's still one of the best places and one of the greatest formators of future preachers and teachers and lecturers and novice masters. And it's all anchored in 2 things: fidelity to the church, the place was full of habits and prayers were said, and also on authentic prayer. The Angelicum is a place of great prayer to this day, and I think it's the only pontifical university where during lecture times all day there is Eucharistic adoration going on, maintained non-stop by the students themselves, who at that point are not in a lecture. A great powerhouse of the heart of Rome, faithful to the church, because truth has an impact on the mind and on the will. And that is what I'm leading to. Truth and intimacy are what we need if we are to work in the name of God. One without the other is not enough. Teresa of Avila wanted an erudite professor as spiritual director. She wanted somebody who knew all the facts and was able to distinguish objectively right from wrong, even in the spiritual field. But the other is also important, and if we only have the one, e.g., high-powered intellectual life, even great rhetorical acts and feats in the chair of Peter, if there is no interior life, it is not enough. Then we're not living in a time when we have both at top level. We have a great hope, and we had a series of them all the last century. It's at the local level that we don't get our act together. Look around. All the preaching that we see, is it based on prayer? Is it based on the vertical? Or are we wanting popularity? Why are certain things not said? Is it because we fear the reaction? Is it that we fear to get into trouble? The result is this: certain truths, essential truths of our faith, are no longer heard. I will quote just one example which has been coming to me recently, the result of this. Our intimacy with the Lord in church is at its highest point when we are at Holy Communion. Observe the quality of that encounter. Now, this recent issue has come to my attention through more than one source in these last days. In the period when priests started to ask for lay people to handle the Blessed Sacrament so as to speed up the operation, they would choose automatically the Queen. Now, apparently, there is quite a high proportion by now of people who are into this ministry and have been there for quite a long time, who are actually in a state of life which is incoherent Not only with what they're doing at that point, but with the Catholic faith in itself. What is going on there? We are manipulating God. We are coming to God on our own terms. And for us, at that point, it's more important to appear in front of other people than to actually obey the Divine Majesty. Extend that to what happens when, in practice, everyone in church receives the Blessed Sacrament. Massively, we are betraying the Lord, for He has no protection but ourselves. The Lord, in the Sermon on the Mount, actually draws attention to the problem. It is called in the early church, from that, casting our pearls before the swine. In other words, the most precious treasure of the church is no longer defended. And if one observes how physically very many people receive the Blessed Sacrament, it is actually outrageous. This day, in 1972, I was in the middle of nowhere in Greece. We landed in the heart of Greece on, it was actually the 5th of August, but it was this weekend, it was Saturday. Now, because there was no Catholic church around, I looked for what was there and climbed a mountain called Meteora. There were perpendicular rocks, and on the top, monasteries going back centuries. And therefore, that Sunday following our arrival was the 6th of August, the Transfiguration. There, where God had reacquired His rights over His creatures. People who came apart, so much so that it was practically impossible to get to them, because for centuries the only way to go up to those monasteries was in a basket, a large basket, which was lowered down on a cord, which would go over a pulley, and the cord would only be changed when actually it broke. It was therefore not encouraging to get into the said basket. That was what meant coming apart to be with the Lord for generations on those mountains. I actually have a picture of them here. They're perpendicular rocks with rocks made actually into monasteries with some bricks to actually even live in them. It's very moving when one gets up there. And because it was Eastern Orthodox, the liturgy in those places, I was very, very moved. Why am I mentioning it now? They had what we had. Fear and trembling. The holy other. The luminous. The inexplicable. The beyond. The ineffable. We, throughout all our liturgies, can't stop getting in the way. Our worship is only words and noise, and God can't get a word in anyways. That, my friends, is serious damage to the interior life of the church. We do not anymore experience anything greater than ourselves, but only more of the same thing. We are in the midst. Man is the center of attention. Were Dominic around, what would he have said to his own? We are getting into error ourselves, because lex orandi, lex credendi, the law of praying, is the law of believing. And what we suggest by the way we do not do things, or do things half-heartedly betrays what we are and what no longer we actually believe. If we believed, we would crawl to the altar, as Father Lorenzo said. We would be in a state of terror and prostration if we saw for 1 second God was before us, as some sins, like a clear ours, was also feasted on this day before the August saw. He would meditate. We know that from his altar boys, at the altar, as would Philip Neri. We, even at the altar, can't get away quickly enough. We are fidgety, and we can't give more than the minimum to our God. As in the East, we have 2 and 3 hours of peaceful disappearing into the beyond to celebrate well and timelessly the sacred mysteries that belong not to time at all, but to all eternity from which they come.